Hello everyone, welcome to another live episode with J Forest House. Um, Today's episode we're going to be focusing on supply and demand. All right, so I know I haven't really taught you guys anything about supply and demand as a topic of its own. I've always been about SMC. That's because mainly I'm an SMC trader and I use supply and demand as confluence. All right, so on today's episode of this series, actually, because this is going to be a series of videos, about 4 to 5 videos. We'll be breaking down supply and demand and trying to expand your knowledge on them. This might be things you already know. This might not be, but as you know, I am all about simplifying stuff and giving you the best understanding of each topic in trading. All right, so this is just a topic that helps you to simplify supply and demand. And the series is all about helping you to understand supply and demand better and filtering the noise out there, which makes supply and demand complex to understand. All right. And if you are an SMC trader, this helps you to understand when to use supply and demand, as we will be focusing on several topics on supply and demand, which one of them will be how to know a valid supply and demand zone, how to use supply and demand zones, how to confluence supply and demand zones. And I'll be giving you guys tips all around the way on how to, mix supply and demand into other concepts. All right. So as we all know, supply and demand, it's a strategy of its own. It's very broad and can easily be misinterpreted when it comes to picking a POI and picking a supply and demand zone. These are two different things, by the way, and hopefully at the end of this series, you should be able to, understand them. All right, so now this is the first series I'm uploading. I'll be uploading this every Sunday on the YouTube channel, and this is the first video I'm going to be posting for you guys to follow up with. Okay, so on today's video, I'll be showing you guys how to know a valid supply and demand zone. All right, now there are multiple ways you can confirm a supply and demand zone, because these are zones where price react from. These are like, reactions from the candlesticks within key levels. All right, now supply and demand can be in any form. We have the job base value. This is explained in its own term, but the term I like to explain supply and demand mainly, it's just momentum and corrections. All right, these are the movements of price action. Okay, so the movement of price action creates supply and demand zones around key levels. All right, as you can see, this is a key level. Okay, and this will be a supply zone on the lower time frame. All right, this is how supply and demand zone works. Now, this is also the key level, and on the lower time frame, you can see, even on this time frame, you can see the fair value gap, which is coming within this zone. On the lower time frame of this, obviously, you'll be seeing a demand zone or a supply zone being flipped at this particular point. These are mediums of when to use a supply zone and how to use them. Okay, so I'm going to be showing you guys how to pick supply and demand zones and when to know a valid supply and demand zone, or even when to actually be looking for a supply and demand zone. Now, one of the first criteria I use in a valid supply and demand zone is multi-time frame supply and demand. Now, what I mean by multi-time frame supply and demand is that this helps us to understand that we all know how to do multi-time frame analysis. I've done series of videos explaining this to you guys, and we know that picking a multi-time frame zone is a very, very strong confluence for knowing a valid POI. All right, now this helps us as well to understand when to pick or when to expect a valid reaction from a supply and demand zone. All right, now this is the monthly time frame. This is a 3-month time frame, actually. You have to understand that if it's a refined supply and demand zone from the 3 months time frame, would be very strong, having a daily demand zone against it. Let's say a refined supply zone from the 3 months time frame on the daily time frame is going to be stronger than a daily time frame demand zone, which is actually picked on the daily time frame. All right. Now, what I'm trying to say is that if the daily time frame supply zone is not confirmed by the higher time frame POI or a higher time frame key zone, this makes it weak against a higher time frame refined key zone. But this all plays in with which direction of the trend, or which direction the trend is heading, and what the trade is actually doing. Now, as you can see, this is a 3-month time frame, and this is a key level, which we have a demand zone. I'm going to be using previous price actions to give you guys examples. I won't be using live chat because this is just examples, and I'm just trying to simplify this stuff. I didn't create them, right? So you can test them yourself to see how valid they work. For me, this is how I've been using them, and they have been very efficient to me. Now, as you can see, this is the monthly time frame. You can see the demand zone, the supply zone, sorry, which was created here. As you can see, the momentum, the correction, and then the momentum again. This is now this is like a bearish supply zone. All right, this is how you know a bearish supply zone. There's the rally, the drop base drop, the rally base rally. There's the rally base drop, and there's also the drop base rally. Now, these are 10 supply and demand traders used to identify supply and demand zones to help them understand which they're trading for. Now, this, you see, it's actually a bearish supply zone. All right. Now, this happens mainly when a key zone is invalidated and we have a break of structure. So this is more like how the flip theory comes out. This is where the flip theory was gotten from. Okay. So now once the zone have been created, you expect a reaction like this. Right? Same thing goes for this, but this is, on the bullish side. And it's more like this. So you see, it's more like the flip zone. And now you see these ones are used for reversals. These are mainly used for reversals because this is like price reacting from a kill zone, which just broke structure, and then it comes back up to give you the rally. This is the rally base then drop. This is more like the confirmation than this. And mainly it's more like a reversal because it happens mainly when price is about to change trend. Because as you can see, price was on the bullish side. Then the base came in before the drop, and then price is expected to test the base to give us a continuation. And this can be in any scenario. This can be testing a flip zone as well. As you can see, this is all how supply and demand works. Same thing goes for this guy, and then price is, this is expected. Okay, now that being deleted, I just hope you have the basic concept of supply and demand because that's just the basic, right? The supply and demand is more in depth than that, but these patterns give you the basic concept of how supply and demand really works. And it's not just an order block, right? An order block is far different from supply and demand. That's ICT's concept. ICT created the order block, but ICT did not create supply and demand. Okay, so you have to know that those are two different things, and another block found in a supply or demand zone is very, very valid, and it's another way to have a confluence of a valid supply or a valid demand zone. All right. Now, for my example, I told you guys this was a key zone, a key level, and then we can see clearly, we had a monthly supply, right? Right now the key level, as you can see, the drop, base, drop, key level, and then we're expecting price to retest this and drop. Right, this is a perfect example. And then now, if we want to refine this, let's say we wanted to refine this to a more smaller POI, to get a more refined as for an entry, because this is just a POI. And this is the monthly time frame. Now, within this zone, we'll be area of focus. Now, this is a supply zone on the monthly time frame. Okay, that is how that is when you use it. This is the confluence of using multiple time frames to get to supply and demand zone, like I explained earlier. Now, on this time frame, what do we see? Now, there's a zone over here, and there's another right here. All right. So on the confluence, on the next series, let's say on the next video, I'll be explaining to you guys multiple or different types of supply and demand zones. I would explain what this is and why I call this a different zone. All right. For now, just get the concept of how a supply and demand zone is explained and how to pick a multiple time frame supply and demand zone. Because this is just the intro to supply and demand. And on the next 3 to 4 series, I'll be breaking it down to explain more for you guys. But at the end of this video, you should have the basic understanding of supply and demand and how to actually use supply and demand zones. Okay. Now, for those who are already advanced in supply and demand, I believe this is going to also help you give you a better understanding of how to refine supply and demand or how to get a valid supply and demand zone. Now, on this supply and demand, we have identified the 2 possible POIs on the monthly time frame, which we can refine from. And on the weekly, what do we see? Within these POIs, we look for our POI. Within this demand, within the supply zone, sorry, we look for our POIs, which we can expect price to react from. On the first, we can refine that to this, which is the hidden base over here. All right. And on the one on the top, we can refine that to this, which is the last range before the stop hunt. All right, now the stop hunts happened here. I had one here. We had one here. All right, we also had one here. All right, then we had a breakout structure from here, and then one from here as well. Okay, so this was like the last range before that drop. It brings its own confluence into the entire story, but I'll explain that to you guys as well. But at the same time, we understand that what's a supply or demand zone. Mainly, we remember these patterns and how to use them to pick supply and demand zones. And now, if you take all this out, understanding we are looking for a POI within this zone, what do you see? Refining this zone, I would say I see a trend like this. Drop. Now, if I should bring this out, what do you see? Break, and then while drop, base, drop. All right, so that means this is a key level on the weekly time frame. And this, you see right here, is a supply zone. Now, where did you get this from? This was gotten from a refined 3 months POI. All right, this was getting from a refined 3 months POI. Now, along the series, probably I might create an entry to understand how to pick an entry from the lower time frame. But this is just going to give you a basic concept of how to use supply and demand zone on the higher time frame. And I'm just going to keep the video as short as possible to make sure no one gets confused along the series. Okay, so you can pause this. You can take this back to the beginning to try to understand what just happened here or what I was doing if you're confused. And if you are following up or you haven't gotten that advanced in this supply and demand, just rewind the video and then take your time to understand this. Okay. Now, understanding this, we have this POI, and then which is the other pattern for supply and demand? The rally base drop, right? Now, with that understanding, you can also see we had rally, a base, then a drop. Within that, we have this key level. We have this supply zone. Right, so we just refined our supply zone to two possible entries where price could react from. And on the 3 months time frame, we would still observe if we are still within the candles of our refined zone. Let me take this out. All right, so we just refined this, and what did we find? We found this, then drop, first POI resting from here, refined to this, and then we also had one from this key zone, refined to this. All right, so this is now what we call a multi-time frame supply and demand zone, because this zone was gotten from the higher time frame and then refined to the lower time frame. All right, this confluence helps you to understand how to pick a valid POI and how to actually understand the real way to use supply and demand zones. Okay, because if you do understand how to mark them, all right, this gives you a bigger leverage to understanding how to trade them. All right, so this video is just showing you guys how to actually mark supply and demand zones and what supply and demand zones really are. Okay, so once you understand this, we will move further in the coming series to understand how to trade them and how to know when to confluence them with other strategies. Okay, now let me give you guys one of the bullish examples, and then we'll call it video on these videos. Okay, now let's look for a demand zone, about a demand zone. I want to give you guys a clean example so nobody get confused on how we did that. All right, so now this is one. This is far behind. I don't want us to go looking for that on the right hand from price has been bearish on this pair. Let me look at USD. Card. All right, so on USD card, we have this. And on the 3 months time frame, we see price reacting from this zone. All right, so this is a 3 months demand zone. I'm calling this a demand zone because clearly you can see the key level from here, the price reacted from. Although price did not clear these highs to give us a bullish structure for a pullback, but as we can see, price still gave a reaction. Now, this goes back to understanding if bullish or bearish. But if you ask me, I think it's likely to do something like this. I don't know. I'm not making analysis now, so I'll focus on the topic of the day. So we had this. This was a demand zone, all right? This was a demand zone. Is it valid or not? This is not a video to confirm a valid or an invalid supply and demand zone. This is just a video to tell you how to pick one. Okay, so if it's valid or not, it's none of our business for today. We're just going to know how to pick a valid zone, to get a reaction from. All right, so now this is a demand zone in the monthly time, 3 months time frame, and then we're finding down to the 1 month time frame. We would have this. On the 1 month time frame, what do we see? Now, this right here was coming from this mitigation. All right, so this was the mitigation at first, coming from, our key level. And then secondly, we had this reaction. We're finding this to this, we could find something very understandable from here. And then this wasn't a break, this was just a stop point, okay? As I told you guys earlier, this did not break, so this is kind of like a weak low. What we expect from weak lows and weak highs are stop points, okay? So it's valid, it's still valid unless price closes below this level, then we say it's a break. For now, it's still a valid demand zone, and you can see the reaction we got from that. But now, let's say we were to refine this. On the monthly, we don't see anything, okay? But on the weekly, what do we see? We see a drop, a base, and then a rally. That's a bullish demand zone pattern. And then clearly, it's very obvious. So if we were to pick a demand zone resting at that point, it would be this. But this is a weekly demand zone within a 3 months POI. And the same thing we have over here. You can use your eye to spot, the patterns, and then you can see the reactions as well. Like I told you guys, this was a week low, so we had a stop point and price gave us its reactions. Now you can see at the same time, there's a perfect example at this point on the weekly time frame. We had these key levels, and then what did price do? Rally, base, rally. All right. This is another rally, a base, and a rally again. So what does that mean? We have a demand zone here, and also another demand zone right here. Now, these are valid demand zones. All right, this is how you pick a valid demand zone. Is it going to hold to continue the trend? That's not based on the demand zone to demand. That's not based on the demand zone to determine. That's all based on the structure. But at the same time, what the demand zone is here to do is to tell you if you're going to have a reaction or not. And did we have a reaction? Yes. This was our first reaction from this zone, and then this was the reaction from this zone as well. So as long as you pick the demand zone at the right position or at the right POY, you're always going to be getting a reaction worth trading from it, okay? So this is how you pick a demand and supply and demand zone, and this are actually what supply and demand zone are all about. And the confluence of it all is to help you understand your higher time frame POYs and where to actually pick or refine a higher time frame POY form. Okay, so in the next series, I'll be telling you how to actually confirm a valid or a breakout from a demand and supply zone, a valid reaction or a breakout. Okay, for this, I just introduced you how to use supply and demand zone and how to actually, mark them. And I'm trying to keep this video within a doable range, so you guys can also actually rewatch them as much as possible to get the information being shared on them. Okay, thank you all for watching. Watch out for the next video next week, Sunday, and you can check the description for any other information. Okay, you have a nice day.